Cool, guys. I don't know what week it is, but this is our community call on Friday. It's August 9th, and we've got Nickademus de la Rosa here with us. He's a recent graduate from the University of Western States Sports Psychology program. And he's a good friend of mine. And I also love his wife. I love them both and all of their animals. So we met when we all lived in Sedona and have been friends ever since. So Nick is actually the impetus for me starting the sports psych program after a dinner at Tumerico in Tucson. And I am just like so thrilled that he's here to talk to us because he's brilliant and super inspiring. And I think that he's going to have a lot of things that we can apply immediately to training and racing. So I will, Nick, I'll let you take it away and I'll go on mute. So thank you so much for being here with us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on and everything like that. Great to be with the Integrated Strides crew and everything. And yeah, if throughout the conversation you guys have questions or anything like that, feel free to throw them in the chat box if you feel like you're going to forget it or something like that. I'll definitely try to leave like 10, 12, 15 minutes or something like that towards the end of the call for a Q&A. But yeah, going right into things. So for my icebreaker, I'm gonna go and demonstrate. So if everyone's at a desk and has a pen accessible, I want you to, if you have a pen and paper accessible, what I want you to try is grab your non-dominant hand. So for me, that'd be my left hand. And what I want you to ask yourself basically is like, why do I like running? And what's fun about running? So ask yourself, what do I enjoy about endurance sports? What do I enjoy about running? And I don't want you to write a word per se. I want you to just sort of let the left hand or let the non-dominant hand sort of just be possessed with that question for a moment. And then we're going to interpret whatever that piece is, or I'm going to have you, we'll go around right quick and everyone can say their interpretation of their piece. So it can be a word. If it's a word, that's fine too. But you're writing it with your non-dominant hand. We'll give maybe 20 seconds, 30 seconds to do this. So we'll go 3, 2, 1. And whatever you're doing, kind of finish it up in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, now the vulnerable part. If anybody wants to share, I'll go first and share mine. I wrote, if you can see that, it's fun. I like nature. What I assume is maybe a tree, a mountain maybe, and a river, and then it says compete. So, anybody else? What do we got? We got mountain. Yes.
Yeah, so mine's kind of similar. Even though I don't just run on mountains, I'll run on roads, actually probably about 60% of the time during the week, but it's all kind of supported by the fact of, like you said, just I like being out in nature and just kind of reflecting and finding peace there.
Excellent.
Mountains.
Yeah.
I can share mine. You'll also find mountains shocking. I've got sun. That's a dog. That's me with my arms flailing because I like to be loose, and mountains, trees, and some words.
Excellent. We'll go maybe 1 or 2 more people. Nobody else wants to share.
I don't have a piece of paper with me, but I was drawing on the desk in front of me, and I'll just explain what I was drawing. It was just like the word that came to mind for me was freedom. And so it was just a lot of like squiggles and like different paths that you can take, and then mountains, and then speed, and then mountains, and then more.
That's fun. That's super cool. Man, so first off, thank you guys. It's a semi-strange, semi-vulnerable exercise there that I just jumped off with you guys. That is one way. So as I get into explaining what a mental performance consultant, sports psychologist is, what we kind of do, I'll honestly say it depends. If you're working with me versus you work with, Kristen in the future versus you work with another person, you're going to get similar to, choosing a therapist, you're going to get a different approach from everybody. This is one approach. The approach here and what this backs up and does. So this is, sort of borrowed from versions of Gestalt therapy, inner child work, and internal family systems. And by using the non-dominant hand, stereotypically the left hand for most people, we're engaging the right side of the brain. Right side of the brain is a little bit more creative, a little bit more attached to the limbic brain, the sort of what I call it, the lizard brain, the amygdala, the emotional part of the brain. And that side is getting to express itself there. Being a non-dominant hand, it doesn't have the quick logic that perhaps the dominant hand has. So you're able to express a little bit more simple ideas, a little bit more abstract things. But this, in core essence, I'll sometimes have athletes, why are you doing this race? What are you looking for at this race? What's the purpose of this upcoming event? And, logically, we'll talk to the athlete and we'll say something like, oh, yeah, I want to crush it. I want to get third place. It's really important that I finish this thing. And then we'll use the left hand exercise to access like, hey, what are you looking forward to at this upcoming 50K? Fun, mountain, stream, bear. And you're like, yeah, that's actually the important thing. And to then like get centric on that piece. And that other stuff is, it's one of the many ways where you can sort of separate out ego from a deeper sense of self per se. So, so that's an intro that gives a small idea of sort of what I'll answer next. So what is sports psychology? What is mental performance consulting? It's many things. That is one thing. So I thought rather than give you a exact definition of what it is, I'll give you a definition of what it is for me exactly. And if you guys find yourself, looking for a sports psychologist or mental performance consultant in the future, to me, these would be some things that I would ask someone who I was working with, or someone who I'm considering working with, and that would be, what's your view of success or like success in this sport? How do you conceptualize that, and what's your concept of failure? How do you conceptualize that? And then through that, you'll kind of get an understanding of whether that vibes with you or not. And so yeah, I'll just kind of read through a couple of my without boring you guys with like what theories these are specifically. Kristen, who's in the program, can take a guess at what theories I'm borrowing from here. But just some beliefs that I have about sports in general, and what you're looking for in a person who you're working with is like, do I kind of vibe with those beliefs, or am I in disagreement with that person? So yeah. So first, really foundational belief that I have is that when working with individuals, the approach that I take is called person-centered or client-centered. This is developed by Carl Rogers in the 1960s. What that means for you guys basically is like, you're the expert. I am a consultant, but my role is to, if you do a session with me, I hate sitting across from people. I meet them in parks often, one, because I don't have an office, but otherwise, if it's through Zoom, it's sort of an inevitable across from them. But if I am in person, we'll sit at a bench together. My sort of role as I see myself is to come up alongside as a guide and you're the expert, you know yourself, you already know all the answers to how to motivate yourself. How do I focus better on this race? Oh, how do I get rid of my anxiety? You already know all that stuff, and you know that stuff about yourself better than I will ever know that stuff. My role is to help you just sort of uncover that and see like, oh, okay, yeah, that's been a barrier. Here's a way that we can maybe pluck that out, try this skill. Okay, yeah. And my goal is just to kind of come up alongside and remove some barriers for you. And then, that can take 2 weeks, take 6 weeks. It can reveal a whole lifetime of work, and I can refer you out to someone else who can continue that. And then, greatness for me. I spent a lot of time in my final quarter of UWS. That's like the main question that they ask at the end of the program is like, how do you define greatness? And you'll get that question like 1,000 times. It's annoying. And for me, it's individually defined. Ren versus Natasha versus Kayla versus Jacob versus Anna versus Aaron versus Krista. You guys may all have a different definition of greatness. Some of the other students in the program, had their specific definition, but when I'm client-centered, I'm all about understanding whatever your definition is. So for some and I try really to stay non-judgmental with that, and that's hard for me sometimes. We'll get eventually probably in a tiny bit of my own personal background, but when it's like athletic identity stuff and it's like egos wrapped up in things, but if like that's their version of greatness and they've hired me to work with them as a sports psych, then I'm kind of behind that. So greatness is really individually defined in my mind. Sports psychology at large is psychology is another belief I have. I'll give you the small example on this of, and this is a greater belief as well, that like mental health in the long run is more performance enhancing than so sports psychology maybe of like, and Chris, you maybe got a hint of this in the program as well, and you seem to be in the same direction as me. I get the feeling that like there's a sect of sports psychology that will use, and not so much, I'm not going to say negative self-talk directly or whatever it is, but that is looking at performance, that is looking at, hey, we hired you, we got 2 weeks to improve the baseball team, use whatever methods you can or whatever it is, and get us some more home run hits. And we're not looking at, full mental health. We're not looking at the player's anxiety. We're not looking at like deeper roots or anything like that. The performance psychology is staying up here at the surface level for the most part, and is looking at little tips and tricks and things like that we can do to just increase the performance for that 2-week season, for that little acute performance. Being blessed to sort of work in the endurance world, a lot of your careers usually are hopefully longer than 2 weeks. We're blessed with sort of getting these multi-year seasons. And with that, especially in endurance sports, sort of that long-term psychology, that long-term healthy relationship with the sport, healthy relationship with yourself, getting self-worth from multiple avenues instead of just running, we may get into that. It becomes really important. So that's a foundational belief for me. It was kind of gets in it. Peak performance can be achieved through unhealthy ways, but is sustained through happiness and kind of joy, good mental health. Sabrina Little wrote a book that my wife Jade picked up called The Examined Runner that I really liked. She's written a couple articles, and she's a PhD in philosophy, and talks about just the concept of like good people make great runners. So like if you're hiring me or working with me as a sports psychologist, I am looking at like, I'll take an examination of maybe, and that's not to say like I'm the arbiter of values or anything like that. And I'm not over here like, oh yeah, these are good values, these are bad values. But getting folks kind of aligned and aware of what they value. And Sabrina Little wrote, 6 character traits or something like that are performance enhancing. And, one of them was optimism. One of them was joy. One of them was, like you'd expect to see perseverance and that kind of thing. So evaluating those and getting folks, to improve that. Yeah, and that's kind of a good overview of some beliefs that I have. Other ones offhand. I try to be client led. I'm trying to think. I have a tendency to lean towards, we'll get into it with how I solve things in a moment here. I do like parts work and gestalt. So that kind of touchy feely emotional stuff. I'm really into that. I'm really into self-awareness with folks. I like emotionally focused therapy, which is like, if I was to sit here in this moment and do a tiny bit of it, it would be, I'm feeling, this is taking 2 seconds, and feel free to do this with me. But we're closing the eyes for a second, and we're seeing what emotion, if I was to try and name it's rising. And it's like there's a tiny bit of anxiety in me. There's also excitement, both of which are right here in my throat. And if they're saying anything, they're saying, get it right. Impress these random people. And nothing is random, but impress these people. And that would be kind of a version of EFT. So I'm zoning, I'm tuning into myself. I'm seeing what's there. Where am I somatically feeling that in my body? And if it's saying anything, what's that? What would it say if I gave it a voice? So I'm definitely into that kind of work. And I feel like I blend that with a bit of cognitive behavioral therapy or dialectical behavioral therapy, which would be more of your typical skills-based applications and stuff like that. So today I wanted to bring you guys through kind of 3 different so this isn't like if you Google top 3 top 3 mental issues or mental health issues endurance athletes face, you'll get a different set of answers than what I'm going to present. This is Nick's top 3 thus far in the experience in my career. And so what I've experienced that athletes, the ones that I've worked with, most commonly bump up against. So first, we're going to chat imposter syndrome. That's probably one of the first ones. And this takes, I'm titling it imposter syndrome. It could go by several different titles. Symptomatically, I'm going to kind of do this we're going to do this like a DSM. So I'm going to present 3 sort of different cases. What I see is the traits in those individuals who are dealing with this kind of thing, what I conceptualize the root of it to be, and how I personally would go about intervening with that, how I have intervened with that, and whether or not that's been successful. And then we'll go to the next one and the next one, and then I'm watching time, so we'll have some time. I've only burned up 7 minutes, so I got time. We're good. All right, so imposter syndrome to me, this comes up basically as an athlete so it would sound like, you're stepping up to the race, and if I'm closing my eyes, I'm doing it to focus for a second. You're stepping up to the race here, and, I don't know, whatever it is, you're at a 50K or something like that. There's a sense of comparison. There's a sense of maybe, you don't call it jealousy or anything like that, but you're looking around at others. And others' physical appearance is triggering a little bit. It's a little bit unmooring. You're looking about, oh shit, I don't belong here. These people are actually freaking runners. These people are actually elites. Shit, oh, it's so and so, it's so and so, it's so and so. This is another trigger for this type of individual. Be looking at a start list, looking at free trail fantasy, if you're more in the elite category. For a more beginner runner, this would just be showing up at the start line and God forbid a European start line where everybody's got the newest kit and newest thing and everything's shiny and sparkly, and you've got your ultimate direction pack from 2005. And so there's this sort of unshakable feeling of I don't belong, which for some individuals I've worked with, and I'll explain this in a little bit, vacillates between I don't belong to then this. I've also had it where I don't belong here, and then it will go and swing to this sort of, how do I call it, this unearned, I would call it unearned level of confidence, where there's nothing backing it up, but it's almost in this entitlement of, I'm going to smash this, I'm going to destroy this, I'm going to show it's like a super ego making up for the I don't belong here kind of feeling. And then there's a super ego that's not based in any sort of reality. It's, oh, yeah, I'm gonna get sub 4 hours at this 50K, when your training would indicate that, you know, you've been 5.5 hours. And then that, unfortunately, will often is the case, that super ego will drive the individual through a good chunk of the race. They'll underachieve because this is a random super ego goal. And then based off of that, what I would call kind of a sneaky expectation. And one way in which you can get to the heart of sneaky expectations is writing with that left hand technique that we did in the very beginning there. You could address something like, hey, super ego. You'd have to call out the part kind of directly, which is a little bit more IFS-y. But you could call that part out to, hey, ego, hey, you know, what are you thinking of this race? I want to win. And it'll just like aggressively scribble something, you'll find. And it's like, okay, so I know, even if I'm denying that part of me, that like, no, you know, I'm here to chill, I'm here to have a good time, guys, and everything like that. But you've got this part that like you're exiling, or you're pushing down, that's like, win at all costs. Better to be aware of that part, because that'll, very common metaphor I use with athletes, that we'll get into, is sort of who's driving, who's in the driver's seat. And that super ego piece, very often in folks with sort of imposter syndrome, or will come to discover you're kind of a low self-worth, a low athletic identity, can very often take the driver's seat. If that thing's driving, very likely statistically you'll underachieve, and then that will only back up the theory that you don't belong at this race in the first place. You don't belong in the sport at the first place. And that'll just sort of continue perpetuating that cycle. So it's a fun time. So other traits of this individual that I've seen, you know, unstable sense of self, sort of a tenuous or comparative self-image. Mood goes up and down depending on training, racing results. So this would be, you know, an individual who does an 8x100 and they're just stoked, just yeah, that was awesome. And they have a bad, you know, training workout, and it's all a wash. It's all, you know, I should give up on this sport. This may be an individual who really needs this race. They talk about, oh, I really need this 50K. I really need to do this. From a performance standpoint, if you're racing this person and you're in the last 100 meters of the race, and you're not this person, and you're both, you know, trying for first place, this individual is going to kick your ass in the last 100 meters, because they want it, they need it egotistically and for self-worth way more than you, and they will gut themselves to death for the finish. I know, because I used to do this. I used to this. I'm talking about myself in many ways here. And then the last things here would be sort of takes failure personally, has a hard time sort of bouncing back from things. A high athletic identity measurement scale, which if you guys want to take that, talk to Kristen. She has the thing, I'm sure. And this may be an individual who cherry picks events, or goes around and avoids certain genres of events. I'm no good at the 50K distance. It's sort of risk averse. And so the root of this, in the way that I conceptualize it, would be sort of an unstable sense of self. The athletic identity, the athlete's worth is very contingent on performance. And the root of this is most likely usually in childhood development. So this is usually something that's rooted earlier in life, before their athletic career began. If you were to do IFS, again, internal family systems, a question that you can ask the part as it comes up. So if I was speaking to imposter syndrome, and it's represented by this cup, I say, oh, hey, imposter Nick, I'm wondering, when did you first appear in Nick's life? Which is a common question if you ever do IFS. It would say something like, Oh yeah. Or what is, you asked the question, what age is, when you look back at Nick, how old is Nick? Oh, he's a scared little 11-year-old, right at the time of his parents' divorce. Thank you for being here, Jacob. And that's its concept basically of you. So it's this part that's acting in your, however old you are, adult life, but it's that part is in the theory of IFS frozen back in that childhood state. And so and that's what you'll often find with that part specifically. And so that part, I guess I'll say in like a deeper sense, this imposter syndrome, it's workable in the realm of mental performance consulting. This is not a bad one to have, in addition to have potentially a therapist working as well with this individual. If it can be afforded, it's expensive too to have both an MPC and a therapist. So recognizing that. But you can have Chat GPT if you're here for the early conversation, and that's free. Warning, disclaimer on that. All right. So how would you approach, or how would I work with an athlete who's, man, I need this race. Yeah, I don't know if I belong. I suck at this. I'm never going to be in the top 10, but I want to hit 15 hours this 100-miler, man. And okay. Oh, okay. And we're just kind of latching on to things super strong. Yeah. Depending on my comfort level with it, depending on the athlete's comfort level, the first thing that I would probably do is begin root poking. The way that I sort of describe sports psychology is like here's normal psychology and looking at like depth of childhood trauma and development and relationship issues and stuff. And sports psychology, I may go dip and come back out. But we may dip into it briefly. And we'll come back out of it. And so that would probably be what I would do first. Is I would take a dip into exploring sort of the root of this. I would engage with the voice, and again, I would do this through Gestalt, IFS, or this technique called focusing. These are all what I would call pretty like emotionally based. If you look up these techniques and the word sports psychology, you're not going to find a whole lot of links between them. Thank you very much, Anna. But how it would work basically is like, again, pretending I had this coffee cup, and the individual is wanting to work with me. I would say, all right, pretend, I'm just gonna pick on you, Aaron, for a moment. So, pretend, Aaron, this coffee cup is whatever, low self-worth or whatever. And then, so it's me, Aaron, and low self-worth. And Aaron, is there any, you don't have to answer anything, I'm just speaking theoretically. Aaron, is there anything you want to say to low self-worth? Is there any feelings you have towards it? And we're just going to treat it as an other person right now. And then we're going to have this whole kind of three-way, well, it's a two-way conversation because the coffee cup can't speak. But we're going to explore that. And then I'm going to put Aaron as the cup for a bit. And then me and self-worth are going to have a conversation, and I'm going to ask him a bunch about Aaron. And we're going to use that as a mechanism to get to know and raise the purpose of all of this is essentially to raise self-awareness of this part of them, of this imposter syndrome. Let's get to know it more. Let's get to the most important thing you can do in this is understanding what it's trying to do. What its job is essentially. Hey, low self-worth, what's your job? Oh, I'm just trying to protect Katie from failure. She got rejected a bunch when she was younger and didn't fit in and everything like that. And I'm really scared if she puts herself out there and doesn't win, that no one will love her. And because her mom didn't love her, but whatever it is. And we'll, like I said, we'll tap that stuff just lightly, and then we'll get the F out of there. If you want to tap that stuff deep, therapy is a great place for that. I need to tap it just enough to understand where that's coming from. And then we're bringing it back to the present and applying that into sports. So that would be the first step. That can take 1 to 1 to 2 sessions or whatever it is. It usually isn't the first time we meet. I wouldn't be doing something like right off the bat. Unless I'm really time crunched, we might. And then we'd get into skills work. So okay, now we know this part and everything like that. How does this part come up for you and everything like that? Oh yeah, it comes up like but how does it behaviorally come up? Okay, you know, when I'm standing up in a I get mad anticipatory anxiety, you know, 3 days, a week before a race. I start just like pre-preparing and I get really neurotic about like, oh, my pack weight, whatever this is. Okay. And okay, so how can we like back off of that compulsion, use a DBT skill, like, I don't know, there's a myriad of different like emotional regulation skills. But that's where we'd start, you know, some skills-based therapies or whatever it is, non-judgmental stance, self-talk. Maybe if you dipped into psychology at all, some cognitive reframing, which is your simple, like, you know, I can't do this hill. I can do this hill. I will conquer hill. And reframing like that, mantras, that kind of thing. That would be the phase where we develop that. And that's after we have that self-awareness and understanding of the part. And then the final piece, that lately I have been using a matching game online, because I do most of my work remotely. And it's just this little simple like matching game. But I found basically I can give an athlete anxiety, I can give them performance pressure, I can make them feel horrible playing this little matching game. And it's excellent because I'm able to see how your guys' psychology works during a race scenario so perfectly with this little matching game. Chris, this would be most similar to like a number grid that they've maybe referred to. But basically what I'm doing now is exposure therapy. I'm exposing you to the stimulus, the scene essentially, eventually here, you know, there's probably enough of this out there where like we could grab a video of your upcoming race, a video of the upcoming start line. I could have you close your eyes. We'll do some imagery. And, okay, you're walking up to the start line. There's a buff guy over here and his arms and legs are yoked and he's looking like he oiled himself. And there's a just super, you know, strong looking girl to your right. And there's like 10 of them or whatever. And they look great. And they look great. And they look fierce. And they kind of side eye you as you step up. What are you feeling? What skills are you using? And we're kind of working through that and solidifying that as much as we can kind of in an exposure element. And that would be kind of the last step. That process is ongoing. And then it's like you race, we try the skills out, what worked, what didn't work, reevaluate. Typically we won't really go back to that first IFS step too much. Once we like gain a vague idea of what that piece was. So that's kind of the formula for a lot of my approach. So the other two issues that I'll bring up, you know, are a vaguely similar kind of style. Again, depending on the athlete, the word that I call myself or whatever or what sports psychologists can call themselves in this is pluralistic in the regard of when they work with multiple types of therapies. You'll have an individual who's, you know, oh yeah, I'm a pro at IFS, I'm a pro at CBT. I do sports psychology based in this specific modality, this specific theory. And more and more folks are a little bit more like what I'm doing though, where it's like, I know of these 10 different theories. And depending on how I feel you would work best, we're going to borrow from this one, and I'm going to use that with you. And that's what I mainly try to do. Yeah. All right. So next one, talk kind of self-confidence, trust, knowing yourself. So, a lot of these are going to have overlap, and that's fine. But I'll state this one as sort of like, this would be the athlete who like during a race, how do I say this exactly? Like it's low self-confidence. It's low. See, but this overlaps so much already with the other two. So just if I feel like I'm repeating myself, that's all good. And Yeah, I'll just gonna describe the traits of this athlete. This may be a person who goes out too fast, a person who doesn't know how to pace themselves exactly. Well, no, I'll say this was more the image of this athlete. So, we'll call it the low resilience athlete. So this is an athlete who, and you run into this a little bit more at the front of the pack, where let's say this athlete was really good athlete in high school. They killed it in high school. They did great. They were first place in a lot of things or whatever. When they entered cross country or track or whatever sport they entered in the first place, they won right off the gate or whatever it is. They didn't have to, they had enough, whatever you want to call it, talent, speed, whatever it was that winning and doing well came pretty easily to them. They didn't have to work too hard to achieve it. When they won races, they won them, 10, 15, 20 seconds ahead kind of thing. And then they did it in college, and lo and behold, they were really good in college as well. And so they're used to this sort of like, oh yeah, that's John. John's the athlete. Yeah, John's a superstar. Yeah, John just wins anything he touches or whatever it is. Yeah, he doesn't even have to try. It comes so easy for John. And so John's now formulated this internal identity that I win everything. I don't have to try so hard. I don't work so hard. Things come easy for me. I'm expected to win. And so we take John and we throw him in. Now John's 25. He's out of college or whatever it is. And he decides, oh yeah, I'm going to go. I win everything I touch. Maybe he's got a little bit of an ego at this point. Maybe he's like Ingebrigtsen or something like that coming on the track. Number one. That's a great race, by the way. And he's coming on the track and he's, oh yeah, I'm number one. And John's walking up to the start line at OCC. And he's looking around these other people, stuff, whatever, And for those who don't know, OCC is really competitive 50K over in Europe in the UTMB circuit. And he walks up to start. I was like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna win this thing. And John starts off this thing, and in the first 10 miles, he's in 30th place. And now John's used to being in first place, and he's in 30th place. He's looking, it's like, shit, what the hell? What is this? And then he goes up a hill, 5 more people pass him or whatever it is, and the guy's just psyche's just going down, just tanking super, super fast. What just never experienced this. It's just like, whoa, I'm worthless. I must just like give up. This is stupid. I'm never gonna win this thing. And just this flood of negative self-talk that he has not been exposed to before. And just gives up on himself, or we use female example as well, herself, whatever, really quickly. And so this is sort of a low resilience individual. You can get another book, maybe it was Grit by Angela Duckworth or something like that, describe these individuals, or this type as a fragile perfects or something, I think is what it was. Where you get fairly far in the sport or in the industry or whatever it is, and you've not had to develop a whole lot of resilience, and then now you're in this place where you're challenged and you're getting past and stuff. So so I sort of described the route there and everything like that in that. And so in this individual, really quite similar approach, where if this individual, the specific example I'm thinking of, I met this person a ways into their career. And so what we did first was we identified strengths. This person had been so removed from their college career and stuff like that. The first thing I wanted to do was find like, okay, well, what are you good at? What do you definitively, you have objective data and stuff like that. You can see historically, you can see in your training, sure, go ahead, compare to other people. What are you objective? Oh, I'm really good at hills. I'm really good at climbing. Okay, awesome. And we may do an exercise or two to like feel that a little bit deeper. Sometimes, we say, oh, I'm good at climbing. You feel that about like a 0. And so I love slowing things down, and that's where I like the whole touchy-feely exercises. You get to really, there's saying something, then there's feeling something. And those are different. Anyways. So So I'll get them to sort of feel their strengths and internalize that feeling. And then we may do some sort of parts exploration as to like, when you pass, I mean, it kind of reminds me slightly, and this is no rag on Noah Lyles. I love the guy, and I love his energy that he came with and everything like that. But the 200 meter, and so like came out just booming again, big entrance, trying to intimidate everybody, and then rips the 200 meter, has struggles in the last 40, 50 meters, and then is injured or is sort of wheeled out in a wheelchair after the 200 meter. And if I was to do IFS with Noah Lyles, I would say, hey, that part, and this is a total assumption, that came up for him that said, oh, I need to put myself in the wheelchair or whatever it is protecting him from the I tried my best. That was my best. I tried my best and I didn't win. So better to have a protective part that says, oh, I was injured. I had a rough time. This is why that happened, and to externalize that. So we may do some IFS in a case with this individual, kind of exploring like why that part's coming up in the first place, what it's protecting again. That's a valuable thing to me. And then yeah, fairly similar with this person. Where you see it, Kristen, more than anything else is freaking Strava. Strava and FKTs. FKTs
Yes.
are a bastion for this. Oh yeah, the time really deserves a sub 3 hour, but this happened to me, this happened to me, this happened to me, and you're like, ah, yes, thank you for showing me your insecurity. That's my 2 cents, but yeah, I'm culpable of it. I've done it in the past. I probably still do it. And what the heck else with this individual? Yeah. This may be an individual with that first exercise that we did. What was it, the original route before college, before people started calling you an athlete, before people started expecting you to win everything that you touched, before you were the golden child in running or whatever it is. Why the heck did you like it in the first place? And maybe we're getting back to that route with this individual. That's probably a really important piece to explore, coinciding with the strength. We may do some touchy-feely stuff. What does that feel like in your body when, oh, it feels like a golden orb that's expanding in my chest? Okay. And now in a later session, I may say, okay, close your eyes for a minute or two. I want you to feel that golden orb expanding in your chest and everything like that. Now you're at a start line of a competitive event. You're at OCC, you're at mile 15, and you're getting passed by 5 people. You trip over a rock and scrape your elbow or whatever it is, and 10 more people pass you. Can you feel that golden orb? Can you get in touch with that golden orb? Someone just stepped on your left hand. Can you feel that golden orb? Not the pain in your left hand, and you get back up and your legs are tired. 3 more people pass you or whatever it is. So I'm really exposing therapy, the crap out of that person, while simultaneously having them try to stay in touch with that deeper feeling, if that makes sense. That would be one of several ways. You could take a skills-based approach too, if the person's super logical, as well. And that's, you'll determine that kind of in the first meeting with the person. So that's that one. I think I'm doing decent for time. Last one they wanted to bring up, and this is a great one for folks, trying their first ultra marathon, first trail race, first 100-miler. I think it's going to overlap with the other 2 a ton. But that would be fear of the unknown. Oh man, I don't know about this 100-miler. Man, I don't know about, I've only ever ran a 50-miler, which is often the case. I don't know how do I do this other 50 miles? God forbid you do a 200-miler. Man, I don't even reach that distance. And how am I going to deal with sleep deprivation? How am I going to do with this? The person who's really far down the rabbit hole of fear of the unknown here, is going to have potentially low confidence, maybe very controlling. Man, I got to hit this right. That center neuroticism that I was describing for the previous thing of like really focusing on gear, on watch, on this, on specific training runs, on this being like this exactly. You may find yourself overly compliant in Training Peaks or in your training or whatever it is. Lowballing here or underestimating their ability is not uncommon. later on in the sport, as this person progresses in the sport and finishes a 50 miler or finishes a 100 miler and stuff like that, this individual may be pretty DNF averse. Not dropping out of any race, taking a lot of pride in not having dropped out of any race. But simultaneously with that comes the avoidance of riskier events per se. The real root of this one to me is not so much a fear of the unknown. With this individual, there's usually something with the relationship in the fear of failure. So it's more that this individual is concerned of failing and how this may reflect on themselves, and how failure reflects on them as an individual, and their relationship with it. So how I've worked this one in the past, again, sound like a broken record here, but yeah, would be essentially, once, I just try to establish trust, establish some rapport, it'd be like, okay, yeah, hey, I want you, she's the generic name, John again. John, I want you to think of the last time you failed. Oh yeah, I was at mile 30 of this, man, and I just sat in this chair and just my legs hurt and everything like that. And I was watching everyone else, and everyone else looked so great and stuff. Going past the aid station. I had plenty of time in the race to go still, but just my heart wasn't in it, and my ankle was hurting and stuff, and so I dropped. And okay, and how do you feel about that? What, oh, there's this part of me that's like, there's part of me that understands, and this is the language that is a lead in for IFS, at least if a person says, oh, there's a part of me that feels this, there's a part of me that feels this way. And so we're talking to John said, oh yeah, there's this part of me that feels like, I got compassion. I understand. Yeah, my ankle hurt. I had plantar fasciitis the week before. Still, I can understand dropping at mile 30. But then there's this other bigger part of me that's really self-critical that says, man, you just didn't want it bad enough. You're just freaking weak, man. You're just a piece of crap, and you're not going to amount to anything or whatever it is. Okay. Tell me more, John. Tell me more about that part. What else? What is that sort of self-critical part that this critical of this failure? Oh, it's saying, man, you failed this, you suck at this sport, you failed your marriage or whatever it is, and you're just perpetuating failures. You're no good in your job or anything like that. Oh man, okay. So this critic's criticizing, multiple parts of your life. Yeah, it's really harsh with me. What is that critic? I wonder what's that critic trying to protect you from? How's it trying to help you? What's that critic's job? Oh, it wants me to perform. It wants the best out of me. It really wants to help me. It really wants me to achieve. It wants me to finish this race. It wants me to, get a better job and have a better life and everything like that. But it's so harsh with me. Okay, so it wants to help you. It wants to help you out and everything like that, and yeah, it does. And so we sort of continue diving down what would seem maybe on the outset a very strange esoteric conversation, but in exploring that, again, we're going to have this much better concept of that individual's relationship with failure. Through that, again, we're going to expunge specific scenarios in which that comes up, skill those specific scenarios, expose, release. So that's kind of my concept, at least right now, of sports psychology. Contact me in a year, may have changed. Yeah, I'll leave it for some Q&As, and any other points or anything like that. If we have extra time, I got plenty of things I can fill it up with. So yeah.
Cool. This was so fascinating, Nick. I feel like you did such a good job in presenting all of that information, because there is so much that goes into like consulting and mental performance. And I think one thing that has been the most interesting to me, and I think you did a really good job of, was sort of like set up the situation and like the symptoms of the athlete that you talked about, and then figuring out, it's like, I'm also super interested in like partial to internal family systems. So I loved that you went there too. Cause I think for me, I call those emotions the exiles. And I'm like, oh, what troubles you today? Like, you know, sweet
Yeah.
anger or whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like, where is it coming from? So that's probably the best way that I have, your interpretation and like presentation on it was like probably the best way that I've heard it explained is like, when did this start coming up for you? And like, what are you trying to tell me? And how are you trying to help me? Because I think a lot of times when we regress or like push those emotions down, it's almost like we're ashamed to feel them. But the reality is they're trying to tell us something. And, like it can help us if we listen. We just have to understand why they're trying to tell us what they're telling us. So that's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It helps just in general, like having done a bit of this work myself or whatever it is, and then doing it with athletes and just like seeing that, like, yeah, if you have anger, self-criticism, you're not going to get super far, like noticing the self-criticism and then coming at the self-criticism with like hatred and like stupid self-critical part, get the hell out of here, just die.
Yeah.
I hate this part of me or whatever it is, and then pushing it, that part will explode back at you usually or whatever. If you can come at it and understand, hey, self-critic, I see you. I see that you're in the passenger seat right now, reaching for the steering wheel. I love you. I'm glad that you're here. I understand compassionately and fully that you are here to help me achieve. I'm not 11 years old anymore. I'm a full grown ass adult. I can take care of myself. I love you. I'm glad that you're here. If you could please hop in the back seat, I've got this, and then drive with your inner core self. The caveat is doing that at 170 beats per minute at a 40% grade during a competitive 50K.
Yep.
When that part comes up. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's so cool though, because I think that like, being able to like have that conversation with yourself and like do that deep dive is it's so helpful, but it's also like, in my experience during like the Black Canyon 100K, like I felt like I was learning a lot about it in the term that I was in at that time. So it was like I was able to like ask those questions even throughout the race. And I really felt like I ran that race with like every former version of myself, where like the angsty 12-year-old showed up and she was like, what are we doing? Why are we still running? And then, like the 26-year-old version of me who had just found trail running and was like so relieved to find a community, like she showed up. And it was so cool because you could kind of like face all of these parts, like good parts and bad parts, but also just be like so grateful for the whole experience that like brought you to where you are. And that was like the most powerful moment. And like even during that like middle 25 miles where it's just hills and you're like, I thought there weren't hills, but like it was okay, it was okay. But it was also like leading from a place of like curiosity and love and compassion for yourself that was like such a game changer for me. That was when I was fully locked in on internal family systems.
Yeah. Man, that's cool. That's neat.
Yeah.
And it's such a wonderful tool for what you experienced there, which I would summarize in some ways as self-awareness. So just getting an awareness of like what's operating, who's driving, who's coming out and trying to drive, and like you said, sort of you getting then to decide who drives Kristen the best for performance during, or who's the best driver in this moment, and you get to choose that. So
yeah,
that's cool.
So cool. So Caitlin's got a big race coming up. She's doing the 3-day Trans Rockies, and
cool.
I'm so excited to see like, and Caitlin, you can jump in and add into this, but I'm excited to see if and when, like, if you're interested in internal family systems and like how you could see that sort of playing out across that 3-day stage race.
Yeah, and sorry, funny that you mentioned that because I've been frantically packing while I was listening to this. But it was great entertainment during my packing. But I think I noted that the question about the unknown. So this is the first time I've done a 250 milers and 100K, and I'm going to be running 56 miles over the 3 days, which I was like, yeah, that seems like it would be easier, but at the same time,
Yeah.
it's more so like, okay, well, I'm gonna wake up the next morning and like be sore and like what's gonna, it's like I've never had that break in between, and it's like, how will my body react to that kind of stuff? So it is really interesting. But Kristen, to your point, I think something that I've been trying to over like the last year is lean into that curiosity aspect. So again, it's like, I've never done this, but I'm just gonna have to take it day by day and like see like, okay, what's the next morning gonna bring? And Kristen also knows I'm coming back from injury, and like, knock on wood, things have been really good the last few weeks, but like there's also always the question of like, am I gonna do anything that's gonna bring that back? And like just that fear, like I had never had this injury before, and it's like one of the bigger injuries that I've had, or like most prolonged. And it's like, now that I have that, I'm like, oh shoot, like I don't want that to come back. And it's interesting too, like once you experience things and you're like, oh, maybe that's good or bad.
Yeah.
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 I love that you brought up the curiosity too, because Aaron's doing this really cool thing where he is sort of like switching up his like mindset around racing by doing a shorter obstacle course race instead of a long 100-mile trail race or a long 50-mile trail race. Like he's completely switching it up. And so his training has been really fun to like watch the trajectory of, because he's doing a lot more strength. He's doing a lot like shorter, faster stuff. So I just am like so excited about that curiosity piece. And I think that that's gonna be a lot of fun in a couple of weeks when he's got the obstacle course race coming up. So
Nice. I
yeah.
love that. Yeah. That's cool. That point that you made there, Caitlin, kind of on coming off of injury and stuff like that as well. We could do a whole there's a whole like injury psychology is huge or whatever it is, but one of its biggest impacts is sort of what you were alluding to, sort of that self-trust piece, and then learning that again, and self-confidence and its injuries impact on that. There's definitely the regaining the health and whatever, the knee or the Achilles or whatever it is, but then the piece on like learning to trust that again, learning to get over that, because now there's usually in most folks a fear of, will it come back? Am I fragile again now? And learning to trust that and your abilities again is very, very difficult. There's a very psychological component to that for sure. And then yeah, I like what you're doing too, Aaron, with the it reminds me of what I've had a couple athletes do as well. And a question I ask sometimes, whatever, is like, what are you avoiding, or what do you like? What do you avoid in this sport? Is it, for me, I found early on, I found comfort in like the 100-mile distance. I found validation in the 100-mile distance. I was really good at it's particularly the obscure 100-mile distance, the like more elevation gain, the gnarlier the course, whatever it was. I was good at that stuff. Thank you, Caitlin. Yeah, thank you for being here. But yeah, but I was always avoiding the really competitive races and stuff like that. And so like nowadays I'm trying to go back to the competitive broken arrow stuff, perhaps for you, the competitive obstacle 5K, obstacle course 5K kind of course. Sounds like the total opposite. So that's cool. It's awesome to go in that with curiosity is great.
Yeah, that's super cool. I think just like the curiosity part is like one of the most fascinating to me, because I think in running, there's so many avenues. Like there's a lot of different paths to the same place, but in running, there's track, there's cross country, there's road running, there's, ultra running, and there's sub ultra running, and there's trail. Like there's just so many avenues that you can go down to sort of like find these different versions of yourself and figure out what works, what doesn't, what you need to work on, what you've been avoiding, what you want to face head on. So it's just so cool.
Yeah. No, for sure, man. Well, thank you so much for having me on today and everything like that. Been a great call and everything, Kristen.
Of course. So, yeah. I'm so glad got this recorded so athletes who couldn't make it can pop on, but I'll follow up with you and get some info about like if athletes want to work with you, how they can contact you, send them to your guys' website, all the things.
Awesome. That's very kind. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Of course. I'm so glad that you're able to join us. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
I'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Have a great rest of your day.
You too.